3 or 4 different topics left in this chapter of namaz. We're going to miss out the Suffa-tul-islam one. We're going to do that as a separate. Next week is one lesson. So next week is one lesson. So we'll do the janazah one all together, inshallah. But the last few chapters that are left regarding salah. On page number, we've done Salatul-Eid, didn't we? Yeah. So we're on page number 117, the prayer of eclipse, then followed by the prayer of rain, then Salatul Khawf, the prayer of fear, and then we're going to skip the janazah one, and then we're going to finish with the section on Shuhada, Shaheeds. So all these 3-4 chapters I mentioned, apart from the janazah one, they're quite short, half a page each. So inshallah, I'll go through this. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So page 117. They say the prayer of eclipse. So there's 2 types of eclipse that we know. One is the solar eclipse and one is the lunar one. The solar one, if I'm right, is when the moon is between the earth and the sun, and the lunar one is when the earth is between the moon and the sun. So when these 3, the earth, sun and moon, they are in line with one another, it causes an eclipse. And so when the moon is between the sun and the earth, in the daytime it will become dark. So it will be day, and then the moon will pass by, and then it will cause darkness for a few minutes or so, and then it will gradually get dark obviously, and then it will gradually get light again. And similarly, when the earth passes between the moon and the sun, and then a similar thing obviously happens where the moon, the light that is reaching the moon, it gets blocked by the earth, and then the moon experiences that same similar effect. But both of these prayers, they're done in a different manner. The solar one, that is performed with Jamaat, and the lunar prayer will be done on your own. So he mentions that it is sunnah to pray 2 rakats similar to nafal, 2 voluntary prayers, when there is a solar eclipse. So this is the first thing. There is sunnah to read 2 nafal when there is a solar eclipse with the imam, and that should be the imam that normally leads the Jummah prayer. So that will be the main, as we know from the chapter of Jummah, that Jummah is generally led by in the Jamia Masjid, the main masjid, and so it's going to be one main key appointing imam in that area of that locality. So when the solar eclipse happens, the sunnah would be to gather together, and especially now in the modern time, we already know when the solar eclipse is going to happen. 2-3 days beforehand, it's on the news. At this time, this area, this place is going to experience the eclipse happen. So the sunnah would be that we prepare Jamaat in the masjid of 2 nafal, and then we attend, and then we pray the 2 nafal together as a congregation during the eclipse. And this is sunnah which is not really practiced much anymore, but we should inshallah try to revive it. So then he mentioned that this namaz will be done without the azan, without iqama, without khutbah. So there will be no like open khutbah. Adhan is obviously, we could say, an open invitation. Once people hear the adhan, it means a call to pray, come to the masjid and pray, but that won't be the case. Similarly, a speech, a khutbah won't be given. It's just you gather together, you read the 2 nafal, and then you make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this. So that's the first thing mentioned. They say it is sunnah to prolong its recitation, ruku and sujood. So this namaz it should be lengthened, and that includes the ruku and sujood. Normally the tasbihat, as we know, that we did 3 tasbihs, we get up from ruku. Similarly, we did three for sujood, and we rise from sujood. But we should try to prolong this, and could be 7, 11, and so on. Another thing he mentions here is the Imam, as you notice, it's mentioned in narration of hadith, that after the prayer is done, the Imam or the Sunnah is that the Prophet ﷺ will turn and face the people. Hence, you see normally the Imam, he turns around to his side, and it's not a complete turning, but generally he'll turn around at halfway at least, where people can see the Imam's face. And this is a practice that is done in many masajid. You'll notice that after the Imam finishes the prayer, he turns around and faces the congregation, and then he reads his tasbihah, the dhikr, and then dua is done. We mentioned that point here as well, that after the the solar eclipse prayer, the Imam can either remain facing forward, or he can turn around and face the people. And turning around facing the people is more preferred, he mentions here. When the Imam makes the dua for this, the people will just say Ameen, Ameen. The Imam will make the dua, the people will say Ameen to the dua that he has made. And generally this dua or this prayer should be elongated until the eclipse is over, or the sun fully appears. So I'm not too sure, I haven't really checked into this. How long does the eclipse actually take? Should be like probably 5-10 minutes, isn't it? Probably longer than that, I don't know. But just check the solar eclipse, how long does it last? It was half an hour, then you hadn't even did it once. If you're doing this much more than
7 minutes.
7 minutes. So it's a quick thing, it's not really obviously a long process that you have to obviously be worried that won't be just for 1 hour. And so inshallah, if anyone does hear that it's going to take place or the eclipse going to happen, maybe you can let us know, and then we can organize a prayer at the mosque that we can attend inshallah. Another thing it mentions here is, if the Imam doesn't turn up for the prayer, which might be the case here, right? If the Imam doesn't turn up, then you still pray your nafal, but you pray on your own. Right? So everyone will pray the solar eclipse nafal on their own if the Imam doesn't turn up. And for the lunar eclipse, you read them on your own anyway. So the lunar eclipse one, so if you're at home, eclipse is happening, instead of going outside, trying to take a picture with your smartphone, then just get on the musalla and read 2 nafal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is something that is not practiced much anymore, and there's great reward in reviving a sunnah that has been abandoned. And in this society, especially the UK, it's an abandoned sunnah. In other countries, they might still be practicing it when they experience the eclipse. But as far as I know, many masajid or most places, I don't think I've ever heard anywhere in the UK that they actually do this, or this is a common practice that happens in any community, and not that I know of. So it's a good sunnah that we should keep in mind and revive, inshallah. So that's straightforward. That's about the eclipse. Next chapter, inshallah, is on Suffa-tul-islam, which is the dua or the salah which is read, and dua is made when there's a drought and there's no water coming down. Hence, obviously, if there's no water, there's no crops, there's no food, and then people will, and animals as well, they will suffer. So Salatul-islam is when the people gather together, and it's mustahab, is a desirable action. When the people in a community get together and they gather for one reason, to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless them and send down rain. So he says here, it is recommended for members of the community to leave the city for the prayer for 3 days. It doesn't mean that they stay out the city for 3 days. They make their way out, and obviously, you might be thinking that that's a bit of a mission, 3 days. That's because we've got all our food, we've got everything, we're comfortable. If we do have a drought, we're all going to be ready to be standing outside for 1 week if we have to, and that's the reality. So we're talking about a drought where there's no food now. Obviously, if there's no rain, there's no crops, there's no food growing, so people are suffering, their lives are at risk. Hence, obviously the people are willing and they'll be ready to go out to make this dua. So it says here the people will gather for 3 days, they leave the city, and mentions here like what's the mustahab desirable way how the people should go is they go on foot in shabby clothes in a state of humbleness before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So they're not leaving in a way that they're going for a special occasion. Is they showing their humility before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we are nothing. We are nothing before you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then they ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to shower the earth with rain. Then it mentions that they should give some charity every day before going out. So obviously that's clarified the part of that every day you're going to be leaving. It's not that you're going to stay out of your home for 3 days and you leave by giving some sadaqah before you leave, and you make sincere. It has to be something sincere. I know it was performed once in the UK. I remember it was done up north in Bradford. I think it was Bradford. This is many years ago, probably the 90s or so. I know the ulama got together and they led the prayer outside in the public. People got together as well and to do this stuff and this stuff. So obviously this situation can arise anywhere, where especially now with the climate, we have the horse ban that comes out in the summers. It gets too hot and people start washing the cars or windows and having these food parties, and the next minute the news is bashing on about the horse pipes are banned and you can't use. And this can possibly happen in the UK, because we're so used to having so much clean water now, taps to open the tap to get some water. But even now, like last week, there was an area in Midlands where the clean water is kind of finished, where when at the taps, dirty water is coming out. So that can happen here as well. Just how long will it take for that to happen? Obviously, they have some reserve, but if there's a summer or no rain for quite a while, then it can happen very quickly here as well in the UK, and so the situation can change. Because of our living circumstances in the West, we feel that these are third world issues, but the reality is that these things can happen here, and when they happen here, this country is not equipped to deal with those issues. Some countries is snowing all year round, people live in comfort. If you go to in like northern parts of Pakistan in the mountains, people live in freezing conditions all year round. Whereas it snows here for a week and businesses are closed, shops are closed, employees are saying stay home, schools are closed within 1 day snow. That's the situation here. Even though they know the snow is coming, it's going to be cold, but the country is not equipped to deal with those situations. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to test us, literally take us 1 or 2 days and shut everything down, and the people will be at home complaining and crying. But we should thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for not testing us in that challenging way. Right? So it's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He's not putting us through those difficult challenges. He mentions here that it is recommended not only for the men to go out, but take the elderly with you, take the children with you, take the animals even with you, and when you go, gather together to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says everyone should pray however much he wishes, but individually. Afterwards, they make supplication and seek forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Imam then stands facing the Qibla, raising his hands, while the people remain sitting, responding with Ameen to his supplication, ideally for that which has come in the noble Sunnah. So there's obviously Sunnah du'as that are read at this time. They mention one here which is in the back of the book at page 196 that you can read through as well. So it says here, it is not Sunnah for the Imam to turn his garments. Non-Muslims may not attend this prayer. In the other madhahib, in the other schools, they mention that the Imam turns his clothes, i.e. it's a way of showing that the blessing descending. Yeah, it also mentions that the dua is done with the hands like this, right? Instead of like this, as in the blessing coming down in that case. But in the Hanafi school, the turning of the clothes is not something which is a sunnah understood to be a sunnah to do. And so hence you just make the dua and everyone join the Imam in the dua and seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's forgiveness, and they ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to shower them with abundance of rain that can help them out the drought and this intense situation that they find themselves in. Next chapter is Salatul-Khawf, or the prayer regarding khawf. How to pray in a situation where you're at danger and your life is at risk. One of the examples would be in jihad, for example. How would you pray your salah in jihad? The group or the Jamaat of the Muslims will split into two groups. So if it's a 2 rakat namaz, which is like Fajr Salah, half the people will read the first rakat with the Imam, while the other half defend. Then, after 1 rakat is finished, they go and defend, and the first one who were defending, they join the Imam in the second rakat. So the Imam carries on the prayer like 2 rakats as normal. But the people behind who are on battle now, obviously it's jihad, so the first ones, the first group, they'll read the first rakat to the Imam, then they go defend. Then the second group who are defending, they join the Imam and read the second rakat to the Imam. Is that clear? That's a 2 rakat namaz. If it's a 4 or 3 or 4 rakat namaz, if it's the guys, the first group, they'll read the 2 rakats with the Imam, and obviously the Imam is going to be doing the tilawat of the surahs in the first 2 rakats. Then they go in the battlefield to defend, and those who are defending, the group 2, they join the Imam in rakat 3 and 4. But the 3 and 4 obviously are read without any tilawat, because the Imam won't be doing tilawat in the 3 and 4. So ideally those guys have missed the tilawat because they joined in the 3rd and 4th. Now after they done 2, they go back to the battlefield, and now the other 2 come back. The first group comes back. But the Imam's finished now. He's done his 4, he's not going to read 8, right? So Imam gives the salam. Then the first group, they read their 2 and they finish. Then they swap with the other group again, and the other group, they read their 2, but they're going to read their 2 with tilawat because they missed it the first time. The first group, they read with the Imam 2 rakats, and then they read 2 on their own afterwards. And the second group, they read the 3rd and 4th with the Imam, and when they read their actual 3rd and 4th, because they only read 2 with the Imam, right? They do tilawat in their 3rd and 4th, if that's clear. If not,
First, when they read the first 2 reports, if people read only 1 report, do they just stand up and go, or do they just go?
No, they stand up and go. But because of the situation, they'll be still considered in namaz. Right? It's not that the namaz is going to break and then they come do 2 more. The same 4 rakats will be considered as 1 prayer. But because of the circumstances, and the example I gave is of jihad, Not all the time it's going to be jihad. It will be obviously danger is still considered a form of jihad, but not the other. Could be something else that's causing them to be in danger, right? But generally, this is how salah is done in the battlefield. There was last year there's a video going around. I think it was in Palestine, where they were practicing this in Syria. That when they were being attacked, some were doing salah, some were just standing there trying to defend, and then they were stopping. I think that was last year or the year before. But there was a video going around. But that's how generally it will be done in a battle or when your life's at risk. I'll just read through this in case I missed anything. So if there is intense fear due to an enemy attack, a group of Muslims should block off the enemy while another group of Muslims pray half the prayer with the Imam. After finishing this group, excluding the Imam, so the Imam carries on, goes out to the enemy while the second group comes and forth and reads the remainder of the prayer with the Imam. After which he alone makes the salam, so the Imam will make the salam only. This second group then goes back to the enemy while the first group returns and prays without any recitation, because their tilawat was done with the Imam's first two rakats. After making their salam, now obviously they four are done. Two with the Imam, then two they read on their own afterwards. They give the salam, their salah is finished. Now they go defend the Muslims and they go back to the enemy while the second group comes back and finishes their prayer with recitation. Then if the fear intensifies, now you might be in a situation that you can't actually pray your salah like that. Because you might be in the midst of the fire, jihad, or you're in a live battle. In that situation, everyone's going to read their own namaz. You stay on, if you're on a horse, whatever situation you're in, you pray on your ride or your animal that you have, and you pray individually, whatever direction it faces. Right? So if you need to face that way, obviously the enemy is not going to be in the direction of the Qibla. The enemy could be in that direction, the enemy could be there. So you, whatever way you can face and stay safe and keep God as well at the same time, then you pray your salah on the animal in that direction. I'm saying animal, but generally it could be whatever you're on. You could be in modern day weapon that exists, like a tank or something like that as well. He said it's recommended to carry one's weapon while praying Salatul Khawf, of the prayer of fear. So you won't put your equipment down. So if you have your weapon with you, your gun, whatever it is, you keep that with you, you pray your salah, and then you keep going. Next is the Suffa-tul-islam. This is quite long. We jump this and come back to this inshallah. And the last chapter in this section and all the topic of salah will be over, is about shuhada, martyrs. Page 125.
Question. Was there a method that they would use when attacking enemies? Is there some way they used to do it?
In terms of jihad?
Yeah.
In terms of jihad, that actually depends on, there's obviously kitab al-jihad where you can study the fiqh of jihad, how to go on jihad, what's the rules and where jihad applies, that'll be that kind of aspect. But in terms of how to actually fight, that all depends on the circumstances of your situation. So the commander, obviously he'll pull the shots at that time. Okay, this is the strategy we need to use, and this is what we need to apply, and so on. So there's no one fixed method of jihad in that sense. If you are kind of understand your question as how to actually go about the battle, right? But that will obviously depend on every situation. Every battle will be different. Yeah. So like Ghazwa Khandaq, for example, the Sahaba Ikram, they built a trench. Yeah. In other battles, like Battle of Uhud, it was different. Battle of Badr, it was different. Every battle, if you study the seerah, every battle requires its own strategy. So obviously that varies as well. And so obviously the general rulings, what you can't do, who you can't attack, ladies, children, elderly. So obviously there's that general rule that applies, but then there'll be obviously the method itself will be applied in terms of the jihad itself. The battle itself that they're facing, or the people will be facing, how they go about that. So here, chapter 1, on page 125, Shuhada, martyrs. So here obviously is a fiqh book. It's not going to just mention the footnote that this book doesn't discuss their rank in the hereafter and so on. They're just going to tell the legal rules. Are they given ghusl or not and stuff like that. The fiqh aspect to a shaheed. And so that's why obviously fiqh covers the legal rulings. So he says, a martyr is one who is killed by an enemy, rebel, highway bandit, robbers in his house at night, even if killed by a heavy object, or one who is killed unjustly by a Muslim with a sharp object. So this is the definition of a shaheed, a person who dies. Obviously we have other forms of shaheed that are mentioned, which a person who drowns. The other one they covered here, a person who is killed by a heavy or a building collapsing above them, and those are shuhada as well. But a shaheed who is generally killed, here by highway robber, it includes if someone is trying to, normally we understand a shaheed to be someone who dies in battle. Right? That's like the loosely speaking that or the main understanding of a shaheed that we have in our mind. A person who's gone to jihad and he died in jihad. But jihad is not only on the battlefield. If someone, for example, is trying to steal your house and you try to protect your family, safeguard them, and you're killed in that situation, you're still a shaheed. A person who's trying to protect other people from a robbery maybe, and they stand up for that person and they get stabbed, they die. It could be anywhere, it could be on our streets. That happens to youngsters. There was a youngster that was recently killed up north, that he was just trying to stop someone from being robbed, and he's just a passerby who's trying to stop them, or just stood up for someone, and instead of that person getting stabbed, he got stabbed and he died. So that would be a shaheed as well. So a person who is killed unjustly. So it could happen anywhere, it won't be just on a battlefield. So it mentions here that a shaheed is buried with the blood on his clothes. That's a maqam, one of the ranks that they're given. And that his blood, generally, in fiqh terms, blood is impure. But he won't be given a ghusl in that sense, that his clothes will be removed. And it says here that shaheed is buried with his blood and in his clothes, and is prayed over without being given a ghusl. So a real shaheed, you don't give them ghusl, because that situation that the fire of suffering, they become pure in that situation. Okay, his weapons, armor, or anything that the person had, all those things will be removed apart from his clothes. If, however, he was killed while in a state of ritual impurity, i.e., he had to have a ghusl, and this happened, there's a narration that mentions that one of the companions, he was in this state that he left his house in that state that ghusl was fardan and the call to jihad was done, so he left for jihad and he hadn't done his ghusl. So if that happens to someone, that they, someone ghusl becomes fardan at them at night, and someone's trying to attack them, and they're killed in that situation, someone's trying to rob their house, you can say, and they're killed in that situation, then if you are aware, obviously, that the person had to do ghusl, then in that situation you can give the person who's dying as shaheed, you can give him ghusl, you can wash his body. He said the same is true for someone whose death becomes prolonged after the battle. So this is someone who's been injured in battle, and prolonged would mean he was able to do something afterwards, like imagine a namaz, or he was able to leave the battlefield and go somewhere else. If he was able to do something like that, then you can give that person is given a ghusl. Shaheed here in this sense would mean that who's not given a ghusl, who died on battle, and his body is found in that situation that he's already passed away. And here the mention prolonged would be whether by eating, drinking, sleeping, or by being given medicine, having prayed, one namaz time elapsing whilst he is conscious, or being transferred from the battlefield while alive, unless out of fear of being trampled over by animals. Right? So if any situation that he is able to leave the battlefield for medical reasons, die in the hospital afterwards, then you give ghusl to that person. Then they mentioned here two types of other punishments. One is had punishment, and one is qisas. Inshallah, we'll cover these in detail after when we do the chapter of had punishments. Had punishments are legal punishments that are set out by the Sharia. You know, like simple ones that we know is you rub something in your arm, hand gets chopped off, and that's like considered hard punishment in the Sharia. Then there is a punishment which is known as qisas. Qisas is a death penalty for killing someone. So if you're legally or by the court found, not obviously it won't be, people don't take the law into their own hands. So a person killing someone, if he is found guilty of killing that person, Islamically the punishment for that person is death as well. That's known as qisas. So that person's family, they have two options. Either, obviously once a person is found guilty, they have two options. One would be, okay, you know what, we want him to die as well. Then the death penalty will be carried on the person. That will be considered as qisas, that you killed their person, and now that you're guilty, your life is to be taken. Or the second option is that they forgive that person. You killed our son, you know what, we let it be as long as, or they can charge for that. Obviously they want to say, you know what, just let it be. He's gone now, he's not going to come back. Taking your life, it's not going to make this difference as long as you learn a lesson. Or the person could say, or the family could say, you know what, you pay us £1 million, you can stay alive. You pay us X amount of money, you know, whatever the amount they ask for, and then that person can be relieved after death. That's what qisas is. So they mentioned those two things here about qisas and the hard punishment. And so in both of these cases, the person, he is given ghusl. So whatever case the situation you might find yourself, the person might find himself in, those two people, hard punishment and qisas punishment, the ghusl is given to them. And inshallah, we'll discuss more about the hard punishment in that chapter. It's not in this book. But for hard punishment, there is great wisdom within the, you know, you can get YouTubers these days making videos that Dubai is the safest place to live, and they do these challenges, social experiments. They leave their wallet on the road, or they leave their phone, and they come back after 1 hour and say, we told you Dubai. The reason why it's in that situation is because of the hard punishment. People know that if I steal his phone and get caught or busted, my hand's gone. So, and there's wisdom behind that as well. It's not that because Islam wants people's hands to be chopped off. You know, in the UK, a person who robs a bank, he'll do 5 years, 10 years sentence, he'll come out, no one will have a clue someone's been punished. Like we know how many people in this community have been to prison, right? Or are in prison. Some people are doing 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, life sentences people are doing. we don't have any idea, and we're just enjoying our life. So youngsters who are robbing people, doing fraud, doing scams, they don't see the punishment. The mate goes in prison for robbing someone. He does 2 years, he comes out, life carries on. They write letters to him, they speak to him over the phone, they're still selling the drugs, they're still doing the crimes. Because they don't see the hardship that person went through. He goes to prison, he comes back out, as soon as he comes out, he's a free man, he's chilling with the same people again. Now those friends don't feel the experience and the hardship that he went through. But imagine the guy, he robbed something on Monday, he went through court, he's found guilty. Next week you see him, his hands gone. All his boys, they're gonna be like, you know what, bro, I'm not robbing nothing. I don't want to be like that. When he walks on the street, all the people who intend to rob something, who want to rob something, they'll be thinking, bro, I've seen that guy's hand. One example will be sufficient to take the crime rate down in the whole of UK. You know, if there's one person who got their hand chopped off to the HUD punishment, right, in the whole of Luton, I'll guarantee you the next day they won't be any robberies, right? Because people will see that, you know, it's not worth it. Hence, places like Dubai and all that, they don't have these problems with crime, is because the punishment, first is done in public, they're doing it in public as well. So people can see, it's not going to be behind closed doors. No, people will see this is what's going to happen like. Hence, you don't see anyone robbing. And if it is, it'll be a one-off situation out of, you know, millions of possible robberies that could have happened. It'll be one rare situation that someone foolishly thought they're going to get away with it, and then they made an example of, you know. But in the end, UK is, every guy is robbing. Yeah, people are robbing the tax man. People are, every single situation that someone can find, they're robbing. Even if, you know, people are robbing from their own parents, people are robbing from their own relatives. Why? Because there's no one to answer to. Cars are being robbed every 10 seconds in the UK, a car gets robbed or something. I'm not about like these banger cars, I'm about sports cars, Mercedes, Range Rovers. Every like 10 seconds something, the stats say, yeah, a car gets robbed in the UK. And so, why? Because there's no punishment. People are getting away, selling the car, and walking away with the money, nothing happens. So, you know, that's what, there's wisdom, great wisdom behind the Shari punishments. So, don't be frightened by these people who say that Islam is a very harsh religion, that, you know, people getting their hands chopped off. And firstly, it hardly happens, and when it happens, all the crime rate drops in the whole of the country, never mind the area. You know, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us all the tawfiq to do amal on this, inshallah. If Ismail wants to read the Quran for us,
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم. My Lord, may peace and blessings always and without an end upon your beloved and best of creation, descend Muhammadun Sayyidul Kawnaini wa الثقلين والفريقين من عرب ومن عجم محمد leader of all worlds and jinn and mankind, leader of all Arabs and صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله عليه وسلم مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم.
آمين. اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا طيبا وعملا متقبلا. وصلى الله تعالى على حبيبه محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.